Hey guys, it's Jenna Elfman from Fear the Walking Dead. I play Laura. No, I play Naomi. No, I play June. I play June on Fear the Walking Dead. And you're listening to the Fear the Walking Dead talk through on Talk Through Media.
Hey, I'm Lindsley Register, and I play Laura on The Walking Dead. You're listening to The Walking Dead talk through on Talk Through Media.
Hey, this is Ross Marquand, and you're listening to The Walking Dead talk through.
Awesome.
Hey, this is Nick Stahl, and you're listening to Fear the Walking Dead talk through.
Cool.
Hey, survivors, and welcome to episode 83 of Fear the Walking Dead talk through. I'm Brian.
And I'm LT.
And tonight we will be covering the season finale, season 6, episode 16 of Fear the Walking Dead, titled The Beginning. Kind of funny how it's the ending, but it's beginning.
Well, it is the beginning of the end.
And the end of the beginning was the season opener, so I guess it makes sense. Anyway, was one of those what do you call it? Abbott and Costello kind of things.
Third base.
Anyway, so the beginning is this episode, but first we have some feedback on the podcast, mostly of season 6, episode 15, titled USS Pennsylvania. So let's go to Rick and Simon. If I can ever find it. Sorry.
Pull the lever, Crunk.
We can talk about it. Done talking. Time to listen.
Before we get started with that, first we have a small little piece of errata. All right, so just wanted to correct myself when giving the credits out for the episode. I said that I thought that Nick Bernardone was an executive story editor on the show. That is incorrect. He is a former script coordinator, but is now a staff writer on the show. So I just wanted to, and we had said what he was before, but for whatever reason, when the chips came down last time, I got it wrong this time. So I wanted to correct myself. All right. So before we've got some stuff about written stuff about last episode. We have 2 voicemails from Renee from Atlanta. So let's go to those, shall we?
Hi guys, this is Renee Murray calling. I was just calling because it's 6:40. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to please give me a little bit of time because I'm not at home. I just left the gym and I'm running in this grocery store. So please just give me a little bit more time. But yeah, I wanted to call to let you guys know I'm Brian. I'm like you. Cal, please come back. We love you. I love you, Brian. I love LT. But I missed the 3 Musketeers. I need Cal to be back. I want him back, Cal. So if you're listening, please, 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 please come back. And I just wanted to touch on with the mask because you're always talking about the mask. I have been fully vaccinated. I've been fully vaccinated for probably the very beginning as well. Once my age group was able to get vaccinated. And me personally, I feel comfortable like going in the gym, at work, of course, because the majority of people at my job has been vaccinated, and then the gym because I'm not in anyone's face. But like if I'm going in the store or something like that, like now I'm getting ready to go in public, I'm gonna wear a mask because I realized that, you can still get it. But I feel like that if I choose not to wear a mask, I don't have to wear a mask. If I choose not to, I've been vaccinated. That was the purpose. I don't want to wear a mask. So, yeah, I just want to touch on what y'all was talking about with the mask. And, yeah, I'm going to miss you guys. And I wanted to call and personally say that. I didn't want to, text it or write in on it, get the feedback in on Facebook. I wanted to tell you guys, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do without you guys until August. Like, I'm going to miss you guys so freaking much. And I don't watch Star Trek, so, I don't like stuff like that. Game of Thrones, I would have been right there with you, stuff like that. I'm doing The Handmaid's Tale, I like that. I don't know. I'm going to miss you guys. I don't know what I'm going to do until August. You guys I work out. When I'm working out, I listen to you guys. Y'all help me get through my gym workouts when, I get tired or whatever. You all pull me through, and I'm really going to miss you guys. And I just wanted to tell you that personally. I love you guys so much. And, see you guys, talk to you guys in August. And Cal, please come back home. We really love you and we really miss you. So anyway, I hope I have enough time. I'm going to get home. By 7. Okay. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
That's why we do it.
Oh,
That's why we do it. I gotta say, it means everything to me to be appreciated by the listeners. So, Renee, thank you so much for that. And Kyle, we want you back, man. We miss you. Everyone misses you. And if you need any more proof of that, there's some more proof of it on the Facebook group. So we'll be mentioning this to him on our little messenger chat thread. So if he doesn't see this or is behind in the podcast, we'll remind him about the whole mask thing. That has been coming up more as well. And I mentioned my mother-in-law last week. The way I look at it, either she got a cold and she recovered from it, and that was good because she didn't get COVID, or she did get COVID, but the vaccine worked the way it's supposed to. And although she was pretty sick, when we talked to her on her birthday, when I talked to her over the weekend, she sounded fine. So to me, it's a win-win. Either she didn't get COVID and she just got a cold and she was okay, or she did get COVID and the vaccine worked perfectly. So I wanted to mention that. But it's, I think you do you have to assess things. Like yesterday, I went into a Walmart, what do they call it? Walmart neighborhood market, which is, if you don't have those where you live, it's a Walmart grocery store that doesn't have the rest of the department store in it. Well, anyway, I was in there and I definitely did not feel secure enough to just go in there without a mask. So I went in there with a mask, even though I am fully vaccinated. So, but if I went to a store that, didn't have nearly as many people, or, what have you, I might go in there without a mask. It's just, I kind of depends.
You're just gonna have to read your audience.
Yeah. My wife and I went to the Humane Society today, and we wore a mask for part of it, but when we were outside, we took them off. So, it's just how it goes. But in case my wife, she hasn't been vaccinated. That's by choice. She doesn't want to get vaccinated, so that's her choice. But if she goes out there, she does wear a mask. But outside, she will just social distance like you're supposed to. So, but anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Anything you want to add to that?
No, sir.
Okay.
I think we've pretty well covered that as well as we need to.
All right. Well, we have part 2, second voicemail from Renee. Here we go.
Okay, I forgot. This is Renee again, calling from Atlanta, on Fear the Walking Dead podcast. I'm sorry, I forgot to say all of that. And I forgot to say, LT, thank you for letting us know that the cons have started back up again. I am super excited. OMG, I have not been the one, of course, since the freaking pandemic, and that's what I was really, really, really missing. Well, that and festivals and just a whole lot of other things. But yeah, I enjoy going to the cons. I enjoy mixing and mingling with people that like, the same type of shows that I like. Because a lot of my family and, my friends and a couple of my clients, they're like, you're super weird. You watch the most weird things ever. So, I like the camaraderie of, people that like me, nerds. I guess I consider I'm a nerd because I read all the time and I like, nerd shows to them. But yeah,
and for some reason, the audio cuts out here, but it comes back. So here's when it comes back.
August, I believe I will definitely be there. I freaking cannot wait. So yeah, I just want to call back and say that again. Okay, love you guys. See you guys in August. Take care.
Well, thank you so much, Renee. And what else can we say about that?
And we're excited too. I mean,
yeah,
it definitely helps when we get voicemails. I like voicemail, and it's definitely good to get some excited voicemails.
Yeah. Yes, it definitely does. And when you're excited for us to come back eventually, that's good. Now, I wanted to bring up something. And Renee, I know you live in Atlanta, so this is especially, I want to make you aware of this. There's a new con that's coming to Atlanta. It's not new. The organization has been around for a while, but it's called Fandemic, and they have a new con that's opening up, at least in Atlanta. The name of the con organization is called Fandemic Tour, and they are having the Fandemic Dead conference, which is September 17th, 18th, and 19th in Atlanta at the Georgia World Congress Center, Building A. So the guests that are scheduled to be there at this time right now, a lot of the ones from The Walking Dead, ones we all know: Norman Reedus, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Stephen Yeun, Michael Rooker, Tom Payne, Melissa McBride, Michael Cudlitz, David Morrissey, John Bernthal, Chandler Riggs, Cooper Andrews, Cassidy McClincy, Nadia Hilker, Ryan Hurst, Sean Patrick Flannery, David Della Rocco, Craig Nicotero, and more. So quite a lot of them.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's going to be 17th, 18th, and 19th. And go to the website is fandemictour.com. I'm not involved with this. I'm probably not going to be there, but hopefully maybe one of us will be. But if that changes, we'll let you know in terms of me or one of us. So, but yeah, so that's going on. So good to know. And I know that Fandemic Dead was going to happen in 2020, but it got postponed to 2021. But yeah, and that's like, I think a month earlier than Walker Stalker Con used to be. But considering the fact that Walking Dead will be premiering early this season, it'll be in the middle of season 11. So,
yep.
You know, so that's good to know. And yeah, so, you know, check it out and get your tickets. Actually, see how much the tickets are right now. How about that? I'll say, how much are tickets?
Gee, Brian, how much are tickets?
There's, well, it looks like VIP admission is $150. And then there's, I see a lot of different, depends on it looks like who you get to see. It looks like you get to see somebody. It's just a question of who, I guess. So there's like ticket prices that are like $150, $260, $395. I don't know if the rest of it is free. I don't know how this works, but anyway, someone out there maybe knows. So
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know myself, but if I find any information out about it, I do know at least one person that's involved with this. So if I get any information, I'll put it on the Facebook group. So,
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that's coming. And that's another sign that things are coming back to normal, I guess. at least in the States. Although certainly the coronavirus is rampaging through other parts of the world. I know India still has it really bad. Okay, so anyway, moving on, we have some feedback from Aaron from the internet. LT, why don't you take that?
Okay. Aaron says, so what you're saying is, ugh, it's Brian's fault. That darn Brian. LOL. Also, I support the LT calling himself the LT. Smiley face.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned, I mentioned an interview. I wasn't interviewing someone. I was in a job interview. So it was the person that was interviewing me that was referring to himself in the third person. I didn't make that distinction. It wasn't, I was interviewing a, celebrity or whatever for the podcast. It was a job interview where the guy was saying, if you work for me, you work for, his name.
Okay. Well, Aaron goes on to say, the LT is a funny man on this podcast. Smiley face.
Yes, he is.
No, the Brian. Radioactive's performed by the band Imagine Dragons.
Okay, well, I'm going to concede that is true. However, I was speaking of a different song. There is a song also called Radioactive by The Firm. It was released in 1985, and that was The Firm was a song was a supergroup that had Paul Rodgers and Jimmy Page. Paul Rodgers from, he was later from Queen, but Bad Company, and Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. And that's the song I was thinking of, but I do now know the song. After I heard it, I know the song you were talking about, Imagine Dragons, but that's not the only songs that are called Radioactive. It was, strangely enough, right around the same time. In 2010, that came out in 2012. In 2010, there was a song called Radioactive from Kings of Leon. In 2011, Marina and the Diamonds had a song called Radioactive. And in 2013 was another song called Radioactive from Rita Ora that was co-written by Sia, who you may know of. So anyway.
There's a lot of radioactive music out there.
Yeah, multiple radioactives. So both of us are right. Oh, and listen to this. I didn't even see this one. There is another one from Gene Simmons called Radioactive. and another one called Radioactive with a colon in the middle of radio and active from the British pop rock group McFly. I guess that's a Back to the Future reference, but I didn't even see those. So there's lots of them.
Lots of them.
Yes.
Okay. Well, she goes on to say, yeah, I'm with the LT. Dakota is easily the worst of the two. It's not even a contest. Jenny was problematic, but Dakota is a psychopath. I thought it was Sarah who was tasked with reading the manuals. Hopes and dreams Morgan is gone, the Brian. He doesn't even have to die. Just leave. But yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. And he doesn't come back ever because, again, Gimple loves him for some reason. More than the original cast, given how much screen time he's gotten and the position he was given since joining. I don't care. Don't explain it to me.
Yep. And I was explaining this to LT. What happens is when I say that and I say, I don't care, the initial response I always get from the person is they start explaining it to me. So I have to say, don't explain it to me. They'll say, oh, no, don't explain it to me. I don't care.
And there you go.
Yeah. It's just something that I've learned. All right. Okay. Well, let's move on to this week's episode, the season finale, season 6, episode 16, titled The Beginning. I predicted it correctly. It is written by the co-showrunners Ian Goldberg and Andrew Chambliss, directed by I also predicted Michael E. Satrazemis, who is co-executive producer. The description I'm not sure if I got it from Google or AMC.com or whatever, but I got it from somewhere. Everyone desperately scrambles to find a way to live out the impending destruction on their own terms. LT, what did you think of this week's episode?
Well, I gave it 8 out of 10, and struggling for anything witty to say, I just went, my future's so bright, I gotta wear shades.
I give it, let's see. Now, last week I gave it an 8. This one I liked more, but it had a weak hole that was structurally, how can I put it? Weaken the structural integrity of the episode. So I will still give it a higher mark, but I will give it 8.5 bloodhound storks. So.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to listener ratings. LT.
All right. Glennis from Toronto says 9 out of 10, Sioux Falls.
Renee from Atlanta says 8 out of 10. Strand, you have lost your freaking mind. Rolling eye face, rolling eye face.
Dieta from Detroit says 8 out of 10, unsatisfied endings. This season finale was yawny face, angry face, boring.
Aaron from the internet agrees. Boring. I honestly drifted out so many times because it felt like nothing was really happening, frowny face.
And finally, Emma from the UK says 8 out of 10, a bucket of fried Dakota.
Okay. So I like that one for some reason. Let's move on to Awesome Sauce.
All right, we'll start off with some listener awesome sauce from Dieta from Detroit, who says Dakota being obliterated by the radiation cloud. And that looks like mind blown and explosion. Sorry, not sorry. I thought for sure she was going to try and dive underground at the last minute.
Yeah, I kind of thought so too, actually, but not the case.
Nope, I didn't think so.
Glennis from Toronto says Dakota is now rather well done. That was excellent CGI, as she had the blast view burnt into her retinas, literally.
Mm-hmm.
A rather gruesome opening scene, but very clever or desperate last act for a mother. Rachel, gagging and then killing herself, and so ensuring that the bloodhound would lead her as a walker, together with her child, and locate people to care for her baby.
Okay. Aaron from the internet says, we get to hear Al's voice again at least. I'm putting this as awesome sauce because I was starting to believe it would be next season before we saw her again. Rachel, who I'll be honest, I had totally forgotten about because it'd been forever since we saw her, tying the scarf around her mouth so zombie her couldn't bite anyone. That was a smart and refreshing move to see by a character. If only the main characters were as smart as some of the extras this week. Ha.
Renee from Atlanta says, Dakota being obliterated when the nuke went off. I know she's just a little girl, but she was psycho and deserved everything she got. The dog leading the baby to Morgan and Grace, Dwight and Sherry working together as a team. Daniel realizing Raleigh was a spy and shooting him point blank, period. I'm thinking maybe Daniel didn't do all those things. It was Raleigh the whole time, setting him up. I agree with you, Renee. I believe you're correct about Raleigh. I believe that Raleigh was the one who set up Daniel, and it was, he didn't do it. And, you know, it was like we said earlier, how could no one have heard him while he was doing all that stuff? Well, that's because he wasn't doing it. It was Raleigh, you know. So Raleigh did it. And I don't know how Raleigh got the keys, but Raleigh got the keys and he took care of all of it. So it was him, not Daniel. He just made Daniel look like the fall guy.
Yep.
Made himself question his own sanity. And I'll say it here. I think it was good that the one person that seemed to believe in him was Luciana, because I kind of see in a way that could turn into father-daughter,
Have that kind of paternal relationship.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, she could be like a daughter to him, because she's about the same as Ophelia was, give or take, maybe a little bit younger, and certainly was. They have that bond.
Yeah.
From similar backgrounds and stuff. So I think that could really lean to something for next season.
Yeah.
And I liked that whole potential that we saw there. So
Yeah, they have a good dynamic together.
yeah, they do. And I think Luciana plays better off of another character. I mean, that was certainly the case when she was playing off of Nick. I think playing off of Daniel could also be really good for that character. So,
Yeah. And we've got some feedback from Emma from the UK. She says Rachel's plans to make sure she didn't eat baby Morgan, tying herself to the dog and gagging herself. That was genius. Dwight and Sherry saving the family storm shelter with the good old tying the horse to the door and making it bolt trick. Good to see them working together again and falling back in love. I really like those two as characters since Sherry gave up on all the grudge holding. Dakota being burned alive and left as a pile of ashes. Couldn't have happened to a nicer person. Al sending the helicopter for Daniel and the gang. It's hard for anyone to trust Daniel, even Daniel himself, due to his memory problems, but this worked out for them and provided another aspect for next season with the group going off with the CRM. P.S. They obviously didn't want to pay the actress flying the helicopter much. Don't talk to her or ask her any questions.
Yeah, exactly.
And she didn't pull her and she didn't take her mask off either. So,
well, I think it was because that wasn't, that was just an extra, or slightly more glorified extra, and not the actual actress that played Isabel. Yeah. They did a similar thing with Michonne when she originally showed up in season 2. It wasn't Denai Guerrera. It was somebody else playing that role.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, LT, what did you have for awesome sauce?
Well, there was a few things. I agree with everybody else. It was nice to see Dakota get the Sarah Connor bad dream from Terminator 2 treatment. I thought it was kind of nice when she finally shot Teddy.
Yes, I agree with that.
And the fact that, she shot him in the chest and then shot him in the head. So he won't even have a chance to turn. I enjoyed the fact that even though Daniel couldn't remember that it was Al's voice he heard on the radio, that he was with it enough that he took Raleigh out, which it took the second watch for me to catch what he said to Riley. But once I heard it, I went, okay. Because I had missed the first clip. So all I saw was Daniel ask Luciana for the gun and go, "Payow," and shoot him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Daniel?
They both said like a phoenix or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was enough to tip Daniel. But yeah, that was phenomenal. And we both had said that we didn't think Daniel did it. And I think that I'm going to go back and watch the gun stealing episode, because I think it's pretty obvious now that Raleigh is our man. Yes, definitely. He was there, and I think if you go back, you would find out that Raleigh was right in the middle of it.
He was in the right place at the right time, and now we know he had a motive.
Yep. And they've figured out that, there had to have been a mole, and the question was, who was the mole? And now they know.
Now we know.
Mm-hmm.
I also enjoyed that whole sequence before Dakota got fried, the one with John Sr. and June. I mean, it was pretty cool at the end when she shot the gun out of her hand, and the comment that John Sr. made is like, well, she's a better shot than I am.
I thought that whole scene was excellent, and you were talking about it earlier, and it came up earlier. I thought that whole scene was great, and all the twists and turns of it.
Mm-hmm.
I liked how Dakota was being swayed back and forth with it, and slowly figured out, that Teddy was just manipulating her. And I have some more to say about that later, to the extent of her manipulation. But it was a really good scene, and I liked how the two Dories forgave her for killing John, and I just the whole thing, that was one of my favorite parts of the episode all the way around. Yeah, including the crispiness of Dakota at the end.
Yes. I've got one other thing to say about that scene, but I don't know where to put it, so I may save it all the way till feedback.
Okay.
Because it's not what, and it's not weak. It's kind of ew.
Well, my thing is kind of ew as well, so maybe we should compare notes before we get there, because maybe it's the same thing.
I think I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah. Well, hasn't been mentioned. Well, no, it actually has been mentioned. Now I see. The Dwight and Sherry moments, them, taking out the old guy, basically beating the bad guys, finding the couple, and saving, basically finding this house, and finding two that, a couple that had survived up to that point, and taking their house back and all that stuff. That was, I thought, great. So how that went by was great. I thought it was interesting, and I don't know if anyone's mentioned this. No, I don't think so. I like the guy that Strand found, the historian.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. It reminded me of the doctor from Slabtown, who had, looted some artwork and put it in his office, I think.
Yeah.
But this was, to a much greater extent. Like he had taken stuff from, I guess, all over the place, and was keeping it for not just for his use, but his, I believe he was trying to save it for posterity. Yeah. And I thought that was great. I had wondered if I figured Daniel would have known Blind Lemon Jefferson. Even I knew Blind Lemon Jefferson, one of the first blues guys who suffered a very tragic death. So he would probably love those records. Of course, Strand, the kind of character who appreciates the finer things, and that would probably be one of the finer things. And of course, the art and the bourbon and all of that. And we'll have more to say about Strand, but
well, and interestingly enough, since you mentioned it, the rifle that the historian was using to throw down on Strand was a Spencer repeating carbine. That's one of the first repeating action rifles that was used during the Civil War.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, and he mentioned, going back to the Alamo for I can't remember what it was.
Well,
but
he had that big painting of Davy Crockett
right
on the wall, and said he had the flag that was up on the wall.
Mm.
So I think the historian's an interesting character. Hopefully we'll get to see him again next season.
Yeah. And I think that is something that is important for a new civilization to emerge from, by learning from the mistakes of the previous ones, and keeping some of that history, as much of it as they can. I think that's important. So what else can I say? Finally, we get Morgan and Grace admitting their love, which I think was a long time coming.
That's right. They actually kissed.
Finally kissed. So I thought
made with the smoochy face after all this time.
Yeah, I mean, it had been so long that we were starting to wonder if, maybe they were contractually not kissing, or if, one of their, like spouses or something had something against it. But
we don't know.
They were just holding it off, I guess. So I thought it was good to finally get there and show that. So it was a long time coming. All right. I think that's it. I can't think of anything other than that. I mean, we got to see, I guess I could say, like, we got to see multiple perspectives, but there's also some problems with it.
Yeah.
And we got to see them all, like, hear Morgan's message, which again was cool, but also there are problems with it, which we'll get into. So let's get into some of them. So let's move on to weak sauce.
You're worthless and weak.
All right, let's start off with some listener weak sauce. Aaron from the internet says, the episode, honestly, it felt like a long end scene more than anything, and I struggled to see what really happened beyond it showed where character hid, because they needed to protect the main cast from this big story goof they've created for themselves. Really, writers, what's your plan? Because the zone is irradiated, so any long-term exposure is going to kill your characters in a matter of episodes. So I'm sure they'll all just one by one happen upon some perfectly sealed radiation suits and gear to survive until the merger. Sigh. This show, how logic has gone so far out the window. I miss the early years. It felt like everything that happened could have been guessed, and yeah, I just don't have a lot of hope for next season. Every single main character finds a safe place, arguably, to shield them from the blast. Okay, walkie-talkies work forever out here, and you can walk from any location you need if the strip calls for it. So it makes sense as anything on the series now. Still, it's weak that only the bad guys die from the blast. Yeah, I know they showed bombs dropping close to Morgan, and he's out in the open, but it's Morgan. I will believe they wrote him off this show when he's off this show for good.
Well, I don't think he's going to be off the show.
No.
So, especially after I, said that stuff about him last week, and that ended up being a big, which I predicted it could be, so it wasn't a shocker that it was not true.
No.
If anything, it would have been.
There's a conspiracy out there. You hear what I'm saying? There's a conspiracy. A C-O-N conspiracy.
The money.
There you
go. Emma from the UK says, the ending. Grace looking sad, another explosion, and then it cut off. I thought it was a mistake. It was just a bit lackluster after all the action of the episode. Well, as previously said, yeah, I mean, I don't think so, especially with them having a baby. I don't think they're going to kill off the baby.
No. Deanna from Detroit says, so everybody ran up out of the sub and scattered all over, leaving Morgan to try and stop the missiles from hitting after he let the missile guy walk out. I know Morgan didn't actually think he could stop it. Facepalm. Facepalm. He and Grace could have gone to find some real shelter from the explosion.
This was my number one problem with the episode. It's like, okay, so how did they end up so far away from each other so quickly? You know, it's like, and how much time had passed from the time that they had left the sub to Morgan's message, you know, and it seemed like some of them were still really close by, like, Teddy and Dakota, they were obviously close by, or I should say they were close by a missile that landed. Obviously Strand, who was on foot, he wasn't so close to a missile, you know, because
no, he was on horseback.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah. You know, so he got far enough away that the windows didn't even blow out, you know, where he was. So, I mean, he was sitting there waiting for the explosion to blow out the windows, and they didn't even blow out the windows. So, you know, anyway, then like there's the helicopter, and that missile seemed to blow up pretty close to the helicopter. You know, but
yeah, that's some more problems.
Yeah.
But
and you know, Morgan and Grace and the baby were, well, they were pretty much right out there in the middle of everything. And, you know, they seem to weather it okay. Obviously where the Dories were, that was pretty close, and, you know, but they were able to weather it in the bunker. Dwight and Sherry and that couple, you know, they seem to, I don't know how far away they were, but they seem to be okay. But the point being is they were all so scattered, and yet, you know, and for that matter, how many more missiles have yet to drop? Have they all dropped? Where are they? Did they all drop in the same area? Are they all like in that same area of Texas? Would Teddy, you know, I would have thought Teddy would have been more, I don't know.
Would have thought it out better.
You would think so.
Well, remember, that was my gripe last week. So,
and then of course there was a lot of radiation from the sub. So how many were there any duds? You know,
could be.
Or for that matter, is that why some of the missiles didn't launch, because they were already duds, you know, like, who knows?
Yeah.
I know that they're solid propellant. So it's not.
I think that they slapped his hand off the joystick that controls the launches. That was sort of the impression that I got. That's why they only got one off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But weak sauce, I have some weak sauce.
Let's hear it.
Well, I'm starting off with our first scene with the pickup truck and Mama and the baby. If you're so worried about getting away from the nuclear explosion, why are you bothering to stop and fix a tire? Drive it on the rim.
Yeah.
The whole thing with fixing a tire like that in, you know, real normal world is you don't want to damage the rim, and you want to be able to maintain control of your vehicle. However, with that said, if you're thinking you're going to be in the impending path of a nuclear strike, I would just drive it on the rim.
Right.
I would drive that sucker until it ran out of gas.
Right.
Because
until the rim fell off.
Well, or till you burned whatever flappy, dry rotted piece of tire was on there off.
Right.
I mean, I kind of saw the fact it was going to fall on her. That compound fracture was kind of gnarly.
Yeah, and she wouldn't have been able to walk.
No. Heck no.
No.
And that was kind of my next point.
Yeah.
Is that just me being Joe Boy Scout here. if you're going to splint a compound fracture on that part of the leg and you want somebody to maintain mobility, you'd have to splint all the way up to like their hip bone.
Yeah.
Because just doing it the way she did it,
no, there's no way.
There's no way you're going to be able to stand up.
No.
Because if she stood up, it would have just gone crunch.
Right.
And more bone would have come sticking out.
Right. Yeah. And she didn't even she put the splints like on the sides, not even like covering where the bone was sticking out.
No, you don't cover the hole.
Okay.
But just mechanically speaking, that's the splint was not bad for like maybe if you broke your ankle, but not for that. I'm going to have to call shenanigans on that one.
Yeah.
And like I said, I wouldn't have abandoned the truck, but again, that's me. Because even with the broke leg, you could still climb back in the cab, throw that other foot in the passenger side, use your left foot, and just haul butt.
Yeah,
keep driving.
Right. Yeah. Even yeah. Your point is taken. Even with that, it's like
yeah.
And I would have said, if you know that the jack is loose, fix the jack. She didn't try to fix the jack. She just,
yeah,
it was wobbling around and she just let the thing fall off the jack. I mean, fix the jack. If she's going to do that at all, if she, like, I agree, she would have just been better off just running the thing on the rims. But aside from that, if you're gonna put the jack on, make sure the jack is on correctly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just dumb. It was heroic. I mean, part of it was heroic what she did, to save her baby, and although I would have been worried that her zombie self would have gotten the dog. Although I guess covering her mouth would make that less likely, but
she still got fingers,
right?
And I think the nutshell part of it is it worked as a heroic device. It's just the mechanics of it bothered me.
Right.
Nothing weak about Sherry and Dwight. I enjoyed that whole string quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna have to throw a couple of shenanigans on Morgan and Grace.
Yeah.
That was one freaking loud crying baby if they heard it inside the sub.
I thought the same thing.
Is, that baby's got lungs like a drill instructor if they heard it inside the sub. And as far as being inside the sub, no matter what anybody else would have said, I think I would have stayed inside the sub if it was possible, because it would have been probably as good or better shelter than being outside hiding under a truck. And I understand they were outside retrieving the baby, and it would have been harder for them to scamper up the ladder to get back into the sub. But, radiation aside in the aft compartments, I still think that it would have been more shelter worthy had they gone back to the weapons room and shut the doors.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about Teddy and Dakota a little bit later. Strand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to throw this in the weak section. Were we to assume that all the dead guys on the floor of that building, hiding beneath the hitherto unlocated historian's floor, were all of Strand's people? Are we to assume that they were the Rangers that he was hanging with? One of the guys had a radio and was wearing like a police type Sam Brown belt. That was kind of my feeling on it. But then if they indeed were Strand's people hiding out in the building, then the next question is, who killed them?
Maybe the historian?
Well, see, and I don't think so.
No.
My suspicion is, just as we had the two people that broke into the storm cellar for Dwight and Sherry's rescue couple, perhaps some of Teddy's minions were out skulking about, killing people.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And the only problem I have with that is, you've already dropped several nukes on the area. Don't you think that preemptively running about and killing people is a bit excessive? Or are we just trying to make double damn sure that everybody is dead for this new world?
Maybe testing out the formaldehyde, or whatever you call it.
Yeah. But I just, that's kind of what I took it as, being the fact that Strand had that screaming scene. It just sort of struck me as he was trying to get back to his crew of people, and that's part of the reason he did what he did. I had kind of an issue of, why did he lie? Why did he have to lie and then confess that he lied? Was the historian just acting as the audience's proxy so that we knew that Strand is being in anguish over everything that happened, and he wanted to, use that as a story element? But I just kind of was like going, why? Why, Victor? Why did you do what you do?
I think that Strand wanted to, I don't know. For all history, it was the good guy wanted to make sure that he died for, the whatever, and the good guy, or the bad guy got out. So he was representing himself. It was him, like, trying to, at his death time, he could be remembered as a good guy, even though it wasn't him,
Right.
Forever him reinventing himself, I guess. And,
okay.
And then he, after he realizes he doesn't die, then he's like, no, I'm the bad guy, and he's proud of himself for, being the survivor. And so he wants to, admit to his treachery, I guess. I don't know. But it's just, it was very Strand, but at the same time, so it was a positive, but it was very negative Strand thing as well.
It was. So I guess the other question is, so who actually, other than our primaries, survived? Since all these Jenny people that were following Strand, if we posit that was who was in the building, are all dead, it just makes me wonder.
Well,
and I was going to sidebar off of the comment somebody made, I think, when we were just talking about the helicopter and the blast. Just to be technical about it, you have two things to worry about with that.
Mm-hmm.
One is the obvious one, the overpressure wave, the wind, the force of the explosion. But the other thing you have to worry about with the nuke is the electromagnetic pulse.
Right.
Because the EMP would basically wreck any electronic systems that were on that OH-58. So your radios are going to be fried. If you've got any electronic controls, they're going to be fried. So yeah, it's not a good idea to be, flying away when the nuke goes off. I don't think they were that close, so it may not be such a big deal. But of course, me having to be the pedantic one, I've got to bring it up.
Well, I mean, you're bringing up a point that, that is something that gets brought up a lot when it comes to nuclear explosions, the EMP. And, one way that had been considered to, take out North America would be like a big EMP pulse I should say a big EMP. That's like saying EM pulse, right?
Yep.
Anyway, so a big EMP that like knocks out all of the everything that's the power grid, everything that has circuits in it, like knocks out everything. So there'd be no telecommunications, no computers, no television sets, no,
Cars,
radios,
with fuel injection.
right. So about the only things that would survive out of that would be horse and carriage and,
pre-1976 cars.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. I could kind of argue about, Morgan and Grace hiding under the truck, but that was actually probably the smartest thing they could have done.
Yeah.
Other than get back in the submarine. The only question that I had is, how fast was that wall of sand coming towards them?
Right.
Is that if you look at that and you figure that, I don't know if it would be supersonic, but it would be very, very fast.
Right.
I just don't know if they would have been able to outrun it.
Right.
Being my time in the service, one of the things that they made us do in basic training was what they called nuke drills. So you'd be, when they were doing this training, we'd be standing around, wearing our helmets, and they would go, nuke blast. And you're supposed to fall on your face, like hold your helmet and point your head towards where the flash came from. Because supposedly when the shock wave hit you, it would push your helmet down on your head as opposed to pulling your helmet off and pulling your head with it. So I don't know. I also have to agree with something you said. We don't know if all the warheads are down yet.
Right.
I know everybody's talked about radiation. The biggest thing is if you're out of that tertiary effects area and you go somewhere else and you kind of know which way the prevailing winds go, you'll probably be okay-ish. So I think I would be more worried as far as the radiation and other stuff if you were closer to where it dropped. As in, hopefully John Sr. and June have a lot of, biscuits and MRE in that hole, because they may be in that hole for some time.
Right. Trying to think what else I could say.
I think I've pretty well weeked all over it, so I'm about finished.
And I think it's the first time that I've played that old Fear the Walking Dead theme abrupt in the podcast live, as we're recording, because usually I put that in later. But what happened was LT and I got started really late Wednesday night when we were recording. So, and I was getting really tired. So I'm like, let's finish this tomorrow.
And it turned into, hi, I'm a potato and I don't have much to say.
Yeah, I started just like, I didn't really have anything to say. So, and admittedly, I had only had a chance to watch the episode once at the time that we were first recording. However, I've had a chance to watch it again, and more thought processes kicked in. And now I have Weak Sauce Part 2. And basically today I started thinking about it, and I realized there was just something about the episode that just wasn't sitting right with me. And I said to myself, I should really go back to the previous episode and try to work out a timeline and see if there's some kind of issue here, because to me, the timeline of this episode when compared to last episode just doesn't work. And unfortunately, my hypothesis turned out to be correct. So now is the time for a very nerdy, detailed analysis that if we were doing the Star Trek podcast, this might be time for
No, not him.
Brian. Actually, no. Nitpicking Brian is not. This is nitpicking Brian only comes out when I start nitpicking on something that is not fundamental. This I would consider to be fundamental. Like there's a serious issue here. It's much like, it's like we've said with this show about time and distance. And here we have a specific time and distance problem. And it's shown multiple times over 2 episodes. So
we went from podcast recording to Electric Boogaloo to podcast recording to The Wrath of Continuity.
Yes. So, okay. So I'm going to take you all back to the previous episode, season 6, episode 15, the much maligned USS Pennsylvania, which I got to watch a second time, or another time, by the way. And, but in addition to that, I went back tonight and I watched it, or at least portions of it, in sort of a second by second, this is the timeline of this episode, and tried to figure out what was going on. So I'll just put out the highlights, although there's a lot of things to cover. At 38 minutes and 15 seconds of the previous episode, of that episode, and this is the times are according to AMC Plus, Teddy pulls the trigger to launch the missiles, okay? At 38:56, so 41 seconds later, we see the missile begins to launch, like it's starting to come up out of the sub, and it is leaving the sub. At 38:59, 3 seconds later, we see coming, like peeking out of the portal, or we see them at the portal entry, not coming out yet, but they're, there, and they're all at different stages of it. So, some of them are on the first deck, some are on the second deck, and some are on the third deck. We see June, JD Sr., Dwight, Sherry, and Grace. They're all there, and they're all looking up, and looking out that same portal door, we see the missile high in the air, fairly high in the air, at 39 minutes and 3 seconds. 4 seconds later, at 39 minutes and 7 seconds, we see the whole group that is in the MRAP, okay? And they're actually, I didn't even realize how close they were to the sub. Like, they're no more than 200 yards from it.
That's fair.
Yeah. And then there's some discussion and between Morgan, Teddy, and Riley, with Strand pointing the gun at various, mostly Riley, but I think at one point he points it at Teddy. But it's at 41 minutes and 11 seconds. So in other words, more than 2 minutes have passed since the missile has launched. And Morgan tells Teddy to go. Okay. 1 minute later, 42 minutes and 10 seconds, Morgan tells Strand to go. And 19 seconds later, Strand actually leaves the control room. Okay. And then about roughly 30 seconds later, at 43:03, the episode fades to black. Okay. So effectively, the episode's over.
Okay.
And LT can see in the show doc that I've got screen captures showing several of these details. Now, fast forward into this episode. Okay. At the beginning of most of the acts, the missile, I shouldn't say not most of them, but at the beginning of the first 2 or 3, the missile has just launched, okay? And we immediately get a message from Morgan, okay? So, for example, Rachel, well, we don't see where Rachel is, Okay, which, by the way, that's a plot hole in itself. Like, why is Rachel alone?
Well, we sort of do.
Like, where was she? Why was she alone like that?
I think that she jumped in the truck that her and I think it was Raleigh, maybe. She was in the passenger seat, but they arrived in a pickup truck. And when you see the scene with Rachel, there's a sign that says beach access 3 miles.
Yes.
So if we assume that the submarine is on the beach, that at the part her story begins, she has gone 3 miles.
True. However, what's his name? You just said his name.
Raleigh?
Raleigh. Yeah. Raleigh and Riley. See, that should have been a clue right there. Their names are so similar, Raleigh and Riley. Anyway, Raleigh comes in to the scene that we see the MREP with a pickup truck, and it's Raleigh, Riley, and Wes. Okay, so either it's the same pickup truck or it's a different pickup truck. So who knows? But just worth saying that, and it's a 4-door pickup truck where I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rachel is in a 2-door or a 2-door with a cab. Something.
I think she was in an extend cab.
Yeah, that's what I think. But anyway,
and just to add to that, I think that Raleigh's pickup truck looked like a Ranger. It looked like a smaller truck.
Okay.
And Rachel was in like a full-size GMC Chevy. It was looked like a maybe 80s model.
Yeah, it was an old one for sure.
But it's a large one, full size.
Yeah. And the point being that you made last night is, why is she not riding on the rims? And that was hammered home when I was watching it again today.
Yep.
So the next thing to say is that Daniel, who, as I just was saying from the previous episode, we know that whole gang was not far away from the sub when the missile goes off. They're off somewhere. Who knows how far away from the missile itself? Maybe not that far, but certainly away. They've traveled at least a little bit.
They are elsewhere.
They're elsewhere. So it could be, a mile off the beach. It could be, it may not be that far, but they've traveled a distance. And Daniel hears Morgan on the radio. So it seems to me not much time had passed from, the end of the episode until Morgan starts talking and, giving all this stuff, because we see at different times in the episode, the missile is still climbing, right? It's not descending. The warheads haven't, separated. It's still
going up.
So not that much time has passed. Now, when we see one thing that I noticed, and I was going to go off on it, but I do have to say that Dwight and Sherry, although we hear Morgan, we don't actually see them listening to Morgan. So that was probably an insert for effect, which quite honestly we didn't need because they played that thing enough times.
Right.
And at some point during their scenes, we see that the warheads are splitting off the missile. So at least with that one, there's some time continuity that seems to work. And they're on a horse. Who knows how far that they've traveled off the beach, but at least there's some time that has passed.
Right.
Okay. So now here's one that bothered me though. 19 minutes, 34 seconds into the episode, we do see Teddy driving the pickup truck.
No, it was a Suburban.
Oh, well, okay. So it was like a large SUV as opposed to
it was an older, again, looked like mid 70s, late 70s Suburban.
Right. Okay.
And they were cooking.
Yes, they were cooking. But Teddy hears the Morgan's message on the CB. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, how, so he got away from the sub, was able to get away from Riley. Dakota picked him up. How did Dakota get a pickup truck? And anyway, the time doesn't make sense here. Now there's 1 minute later, there's a cut. So maybe some additional time happens. I don't know. And there's a full cut at 20 minutes, 37 seconds. And they've stopped at 20 minutes, 40 seconds. And they're kind of admiring the view or getting ready for the fireworks / whatever. But at 21 minutes, 22 seconds, JD Sr. has caught up with him and has cocked his gun. So not that much time has passed. So like less than a minute later, not even a minute later, 42 seconds later, they've already caught up, and we don't hear the truck pulling up either. So the last one, that
stealth truck.
Yes. The last one is Grace. Okay. So again, it looks like not that much time has passed from the time that we see in the previous episode at 39 minutes and 3 seconds, looking up that portal. She is out of the portal door and sitting on top of, or laying on top of the sub. But the missile itself isn't that far up. And we hear Morgan again giving his little speech. So maybe a minute has passed at most, not much time. So again, this is not Rhode Island, Texas. This is not Morgan wakes up in Texas, falls asleep, wakes up in Mississippi problem. But it's just, they keep screwing up time and distance. And maybe, some of this is, for,
artistic license.
Yeah. And, they pitched it as, what would you do if you had 20 minutes left to live kind of thing. But I mean, come on. I think it pushed a little too far, So upon reflection, I had more problems with the episode and how it laid everything out, especially.
I can agree.
Especially when you consider the previous episode. So,
yeah,
just wasn't enough time for all the things and especially when you consider everyone being this far apart. It's like they all scattered, and I just don't buy it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So.
Well, they scattered fast. Some of them scattered far, but not quickly.
Right.
If on your point, we could, if I wanted to be pugnacious and argue about it, is that maybe the missile was higher than we thought, but it was definitely artistically slow in a couple of places. And I agree with you, unless I don't think that Morgan was like, this is a pre-recorded message from Morgan Jones that will be played over and over again.
No.
Morgan doesn't have Teddy's recorder and repeater equipment to keep saying his message over and over again.
Right. Definitely not.
So the only thing that I can think of is, as you said with Dwight and Sherry, maybe this was just the artistic license voiceover and they weren't really listening on the walkies. But I'm still kind of in the pen with you on this, that it just seems like to me that we had a lot of distance issues as far as if the thread that's binding it all together is Morgan on the radio.
Yeah.
Then from what I saw with, Teddy and Dakota in the Suburban, and he was on the hammer pretty hard.
Right.
So for whatever vehicle that the Dories took to catch him, were they going just that much faster? Because they had some lead time. They had to get out of the sub, get down off the sub, get in the car, figure out where he was going, and, beat feet in that direction.
Right.
So yeah, there's, you've pretty well hit all the points there. Because I guess I was more focused on some of the story things rather than just kind of nitpicking the time, but I'm 100% on board with you when you sit down and think about it.
Yeah, and that's what kind of happened between last night and today. I don't know, it felt like I was not seeing something, and I thought, I need to see this episode again. And then as soon as I did, there were parts of it that's like, yeah, I really like this part, and I really like this part. But the problems that I had with it, I had to go back and I said to myself, I need to go back and watch the previous episode, or at least the last several minutes of the previous episode, to see where things fit. And unfortunately, things don't fit very well. It's like, okay, we can buy Rachel's time. Daniel definitely hears Morgan because he hears Al. And by the way, when I heard it back, I could tell that he heard Al. It wasn't very clear to me then, but hearing it this second time or third time, I could tell that it was Al on the radio. But, he hears Al on the radio, and then suddenly we hear Morgan. So he definitely heard Morgan.
Right. There's something I want to throw in while I think of it.
Well, I'll let you. I only got 2 more things to say.
Go ahead.
Dwight and Sherry, definitely, again, that was artistic. And the same with Strand, also artistic.
Yeah.
He's booting it with the horse, going down under an overpass when, he gets off and goes into the building that has all the historical pieces. And we see those security guards, and that's what they were. They were security guards. They weren't Teddy's people. They weren't Rangers. They were like, we see like armed security. That's what I saw.
Okay.
Could have been police, could have been, armed security, but they were wearing walkies, and they were, had sidearms and all that stuff. So, and they were wearing blue.
That's why I thought they were Strands people.
Yeah. I don't think so, because they were uniform security. So they were either police or some security force, or I don't know, whatever they were, but they were some kind of uniform security. Anyway, that's all I had to say.
Okay. Well, and just my 2 cents on that is, I mean, if you're going to go stylistic, like this is some kind of, art house movie, then yeah, I'm absolutely okay. I think the problem is once again, we just run into that whole time distance kind of problem. Something that dawned on me when you're talking about rewatching is when they had Riley and the MRAP crew before they took off to go to the number place that Daniel heard. Didn't they say something about going to the hotel?
Yes.
Well, it was the Riley saying, oh, well, there's a place that I know that's got stuff. And it makes me wonder, since we now know Riley was a mole, I'm wondering if that was a setup. if they'd have gotten them there and there was some of Teddy's people lurking in the bushes to kill them.
It could have been.
Or if it was a legit thing. And of course, you know, if they'd have not taken the helicopter, then they could have hung out with Alicia in the closet.
It could have been.
But since we know that both the starts with R, ends with Y guys were in cahoots there, then it could have been a setup. It could have been legit. It could have been a setup. We don't know.
They claimed that it was going to be, but it could have been. They get there, they get to the hotel, and you know, they're waiting with machine guns, and they get killed off. So either way,
I just thought that was sort of ironic that if they could have gone to the hotel, then we could have found Alicia.
Yeah, we see the hotel at one point, but we
see the hotel and we see the lights flicker and the dust finally fall out of the roof.
But no Alicia.
We never saw Alicia.
And we never see Al either. We just hear her. So
it makes me wonder if both of them are off doing something else.
Yeah, it's like, I wonder budgetarily, you know, what they did somehow save them money, because like literally the only one who was there for most, if not all of the episodes, well, I know he wasn't in at least one of the episodes, was Morgan, you know, Lenny James. It seems like everyone else was only in at most 5 or 6 episodes, and in some cases, if they were in 5 or 6, they were, you know, like 2 or 3 of them, they were only there for a few seconds. You know, it was like a cameo.
You
know, so anyway, so that's it for our week sauce. And it's funny because you guys got about at least 25 minutes extra content because of us stopping last night. So, all right. So let's move on to What Sauce?
What?
All right, let's kick off the What Sauce with Dieta from Detroit, who says, so Morgan and Grace and Baby make 3. Hide under a gas tanker truck during the explosion instead of jumping back into the submarine to take cover. How the hell are they going to survive hiding underneath the tanker truck? Weak.
Yeah, I wondered that too. I think Rufus was smarter by jumping into the car.
Maybe, because the problem is you have to worry about there is glass.
Yeah.
And just to counter the hide in the submarine, while I agree that would be a much better place to hide, if you remember from the shot when we were on top of the sub, they had one of those little, like, wire rope, like helicopter ladders or rescue ladders that they had on the side of the sub.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would have taken way too much time for Morgan and Grace to clamber back up the little wobbly ladder to get into the sub. So,
yeah, especially carrying a baby.
Yep.
So I think you're right. Renee from Atlanta is next. She says, wow, all Morgan and Grace had to do in order to avoid the nuke was hide under the car. Seriously, you are talking about suspension of disbelief. Strand, you will never be a Morgan Jones nor a Rick Grimes. Just had to throw my boo in there. Lovey-dovey face. How dare you try to be like them? You have no morals or integrity, and I can't wait until you die like Dakota and all the other awful people. Mad face. Yeah, so what is a civilization built in the eyes of Strand going to look like?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Emma from the UK says, still no Alicia. Or did I miss it? I saw the debris falling into the bunker, but didn't see her. She must have been off filming something else.
Probably.
Not a bad thing. Yep. Not a bad thing, but quite convenient that all our people have survived the nuclear explosions. As far as I could tell, only Dakota was killed by the blast. Despite the ups and downs of the season, I am intrigued as to what happens next and will be watching next season, if there is one.
There is one. The show has been renewed, so there's definitely going to be some interesting things that we're going to see for the first time. We got a little bit of like radioactive walkers, but we haven't gotten Chernobyl style nuclear fallout the day after kind of walkers. So I think and for that matter, it's not just going to be that, it's going to be the problems of like having to deal with things that have gotten radioactive, like food supplies, water, and all sorts of things that were good suddenly have been literally nuked. And when I say nuked, I don't mean microwaved. We mean full on nuclear. So they're going to have issues that we've never had on any of the Walking Dead shows. So
yep,
it'll be interesting. And I have a theory as to where things are going to go, which we'll get into later. And it may not be at the end of the season, but it could be the end of the following season. We'll see. Erin from the internet is next. She says, the scarf move as listed above aside, the opening was pretty crap, I have to say. Why not stab yourself in the head to stop the turn altogether? If you can't do that because mentality won't let you, then why not just let the turn come? Given you've already zipped up your mouth, why hurry the turn along? Why not just tie the baby to the dog and let it carry it? What if that leg gives out and you fall and you're drug and get shredded and then you're separated from the dog sled anyways? It just didn't make a lot of sense, the opening, I have to say. A lot of sense in the opening, I have to say. Okay, at first I didn't understand what you meant. However, I do understand, like, you could have put the baby and backpack on the dog and let the dog take the baby, to Morgan and Grace. That, kind of would have made some sense versus, shambling walker with a broken leg.
Yeah, but the problem is it would take a lot more engineering to get the backpack to stay on the dog.
Okay.
Because you'd have to rig it with a counterbalance. Because if you look at dog backpacks, they look like saddlebags.
Yes, you're right.
Because
actually,
what would happen is if you just put the backpack on the dog, then the baby would be dragging his belly and would be underneath the dog and would probably fall out.
Yeah. As you were saying it, I was thinking about it. It's like, yeah, because that is the way, it's much like in some ways, like a horse saddle, except I guess a horse saddle has more on top. But a dog, when a dog has that, it's like it's like an equal distribution from on the left side and the right side.
Yeah.
You put a baby on a backpack like that. Well, a baby it doesn't have equal left and right. It's a big lump in the middle. So, she could put it on his back and it would just, flip. So the only way it would work, and considering her state, it would. I think you're right. I think that it wouldn't work, but she is taking quite the risk of thinking that her walker self could walk to the sub and basically walk 3 miles in how much time? Basically 3 miles in what, 20 minutes?
Well, but we assume the sub. All she did was she said, go find somebody. So maybe they could have found Dwight and Cherry. Who knows?
Yeah, but he didn't.
No, he did.
Also, this is... oh, Aaron. Also, of all the people the dog could have run to on the journey, the only people it finds are the exact ones it needs to. Come on. I know this is Rhode Island, Texas, as LT says, but still, it went however many miles, well, the answer is 3, and only ever found Morgan. I call bull. Okay. I guess that's a valid point. Like how many roads away from the going away from the sub are there, from the beach? There probably are quite a few, but I don't know.
How many roads must a dog go down?
Well, and
reminds me. Okay, whose dog is that?
Well, it was originally Meal's dog.
Ah, and so who was the dog hanging out with? Morgan.
Yeah, true.
So he knows how Morgan smells. It's Morgan's dog now. So
true. Give
the dog some credit, maybe.
Well, come to think of it, looking at this, I'm just looking at like the sub is beached somewhere in the area of Galveston, right?
Right.
Well, looking at Galveston, it's not quite an island. It's I don't know what you would call it, but it's
kind of an island, and it's kind of peninsular.
Yeah.
I know to get there you've got to go over a bridge.
Actually, it is an island. Now that I see it, it is an island because there are bridges. But yeah, it's an island. So, assuming it beached off of Galveston Island, there are only, it looks like 3 ways off of Galveston Island. One is a bridge going south. One is a bridge going, into the mainland, Texas. And the third is going into another, well, it's going off to Goat Island, which is, or actually it's not Goat Island. It's a peninsula that kind of hooks up with Galveston in the Galveston Bay. I don't know the area. I've never been there, but that's what I'm seeing here. So there really, I don't see a lot of places that someone could go to get away. And we didn't see any of them go over a bridge. So, because any of these things, these examples, you would have a bridge. So to get away, just thought I would mention that. And nowhere do we see anyone, get to Houston, but Houston is quite maybe 50 miles inland. I don't know.
It's a little further away because you've got to go through, well, the way that I went to Galveston, you go through Kemah and you end up, I want to say in Webster, but,
it's 51 miles, 53 minutes away. So, that's, city hall to city hall. So anyway, I read about that originally. Galveston was going to be considered like the big metro area, and then there was like a big hurricane or something in the early 1900s, and they basically
there was
moved the area. Everyone moved in so that they weren't so vulnerable to hurricanes. So, although Houston certainly gets them.
Yep. And the grand irony is there actually is a submarine in Galveston.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think it's the USS Seawolf, if memory serves. But it's a World War II submarine.
All right. Continuing. Speaking of Morgan, I know he has the world's largest supply of plot armor, but there's no way he and Dwight, Sherry, and Grace don't have radiation poisoning now, right? They had fallout dust rain down on them and inhaled it, so it has to be in their systems realistically. Morgan doubly so, from the sub-radiation he and Strand ran into. It wouldn't surprise me if, out of them all, Morgan survives this yet again. But seriously, at this point, if he doesn't have something that will eventually kill him beyond old age from all these encounters, then they're just being too obvious in his showrunner pet status and being extremely unrealistic. Out of curiosity, though, how would you TWD and character-specific fans feel if Dwight and Sherry do die from this later on, and not because of something that happens on the main show, given they started there? Well, I mean, Dwight and Sherry didn't show up until they were guest characters in season 6. You know, we didn't see them until season 6, and Sherry we only saw once in season 6, and you know, we see her later again in season 7. You know, so
right. And just to be horribly pedantic at this point, you don't get fallout until well after the initial explosion.
Right.
Because that is all the particulate matter that is thrown up into the atmosphere and rains down later.
Right.
That the radiation that they would be getting from what they got would be just direct exposure.
Like if I'm not mistaken, like if there's like a big rainstorm that happens, you know, shortly after, that might be very bad for them.
Well, it would be bad in a way, but it would be good in a way, because there wouldn't be the floaty clouds contaminating a larger area.
Okay.
It would put it all on the ground a lot faster.
Okay.
Because the problem with fallout is when you get all that radioactive dust in the air, it travels and it spreads, so you contaminate a larger area.
Right.
And again, this is why they typically do air bursts instead of ground bursts, because if the warhead actually strikes the ground, then you get more cratering effects and other things. And if you have an air burst, you get all the damage, but you don't get as much fallout from it hitting the ground and throwing up the dust cloud.
Moving on, bringing up the main show, I know they don't have news stations anymore to let them know about incidences like this, but still, shouldn't this affect them in some way? Like there's a map at least with an X on it where they can't go, and someone mentions radiation. If they don't nod to something this big happening, it's just another glaring example of how this is in fact not a universe, despite how much promotions push it, but a main show and a spinoff where they share actors and character names, but nothing else really. They might as well be two different series of the same genre. To be fair, you can argue that's how it started, with the way Fear was more about a family man than random people coming together. But since season 4, it's definitely changed. Frowny face. I'm not going to hold my breath for them to say it affected the main series. I'm just saying logically it should. Well, okay. The CRM, which is Isabel and the helicopter, and the black helicopter with the 3 rings, that has been featured in all 3 shows of the Walking Dead universe, and that is kind of like going to become a unifying effect. And we know that they continue, like even if Fear the Walking Dead isn't 10 years in, like World Beyond and The Walking Dead are, and probably Walking Dead is a little even further than 10 years. They we know that they are going to continue to exist. So if they're 5 or 6 years in here in this show, they're more than 10 years into that show. And we know that they're there because they're in World Beyond, and they're in, and they were there before because of things that happened in The Walking Dead. So we've seen them. We've seen the CRM be in 3 different timelines at this point. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to get editorial about that, when you're talking about places not to go, part of the universe lore is talking about Operation Cobalt, where they either napalmed or nuked several large urban centers to try to stop the zombies, because that was something we saw it in Fear in the first season.
Right. Season 1.
And we saw it in
Walking Dead season 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
in flashback.
Yep. So we do know that they did that, but the question is, you're right. What areas were really affected? How much did they do? And I'm going to assume, maybe there's not a map, but I'm going to assume that people knew that the survivors knew the areas that were hit and just stayed away from them.
Right.
And of course, then again, for this show, everybody bugged out of LA.
Right.
So the question would be, are there any survivors that are still in the LA basin after all the stuff that was dropped? So,
yeah,
questions for which we do not have answers.
Well, and we know that the characters right now are not far from Houston, so
right.
And we even, I think, heard Houston mentioned. We heard the Alamo mentioned this episode. So San Antonio, which is not too far from Houston, and then Austin, of course, is not. They're all kind of down a ways from each other, but they're not so close that they're you guys know what I mean. Anyway,
okay.
Big cities in Texas and of course Dallas. Can't forget about Dallas,
which is further north.
Further north, and closer to Oklahoma, which again, Rhode Island, Texas. We know that Newton, Oklahoma. Is it Newton?
Lawton.
Yeah, thank you. I knew it as soon as I said it. It was wrong. That they were in North Texas and into Oklahoma. So, anyway, a large chunk of Texas, even though obviously it doesn't show based on what we see here.
Right. Because we don't know what's going on in the bigger urban centers.
Right. All right. Well, anyway, that's it for listener What Sauce. LT, what do you have?
Well, the LT will concede his time to you because you got the one. Unless you want to start talking about it now.
Well, yeah, I do, but I had my big one, so maybe you want to take the lead on it.
Yeah, and Brian mentioned it, and he mentioned, and go ahead and start it because you.
Yeah, and I want to give Lizzie from Brains Gone Bad podcast. I want to give her credit because I heard her first mention it on her podcast, and I sensed it, and I think it was kind of like I was getting this, like hair on the back of the neck feel, as like it was this idea of there's something about this that's not right to me. What's going on? And then I heard what Lizzie said, and Lizzie, in her job, she's a teacher, and specifically, she works with a lot of kids that work, in TV and movies and stuff like that. So, she'll work with teaching them on set, right? So this is something that she is very sensitive to. So anyway, LT, why don't you take it from there?
When you started seeing Teddy and Dakota together, it went from, this is my minion, this is my convertee, to then you started getting the creeper vibes.
Yeah.
And then it went from creeper vibes to kind of pedo vibes.
Yes, it did.
And, it just kind of got to me because when they were in those last couple scenes where they're standing, they're having the standoff with the Dories, it's kind of, he's being, don't you listen to them, Dakota. We're going to be fine together.
Yeah.
And when he started talking about, and we're going to, how do you think he's going to repopulate the world?
Exactly.
And the way it was acted, and when they said that, it's like suddenly my brain went back and noticed all of the behaviors that Teddy was doing, and I'm going, he didn't just recruit her, he was grooming her, because this is not just, I'm getting a young, youthful ward to be my sidekick, is that this is kind of like, I'm getting my new girlfriend set up. And I was just like,
yeah.
Woo.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, in some ways, he was trying to get Alicia for that, and she put up too much of a fight. So, once Dakota came in there, and she was even younger,
Yeah, it's like, and I tried to go back and look at it. Whenever John Sr. had his investigation bulletin board, I think Teddy had a lot of younger women that were his victims.
He did.
So that just made it even creepier.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking about it, that the stuff you're talking about with Alicia is that I went back and peeked, and it was, once you get that idea in your head and you go back and listen to the way the lines were delivered and see the way they were doing, and especially that first thing when he was like, oh yes, Alicia, I have plans for you.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. Once you get that notion in your head and you go back and look at everything, then you're going, oh yeah, that's what he was doing.
But it went from, there being with Alicia, you've got a consenting female, obviously, several decades younger, but of consenting age.
Yes.
But so creepy, but not like pedophile creepy, to a situation with Dakota where it is pedophile, and it's very much a grooming situation, and like the textbook way that a grooming situation can, occur. And, from what I've read about these things, and I haven't spent a lot of time reading about them, just creeps me out. But like, these people will go and they will work on befriending, one of their victims for years. And it starts out with one thing, like just, being friendly. And there's like, they'll pick out a certain type of person who's like in need, like a young,
right,
a young girl who is like in need of attention, right? And they'll give her attention. And, the next thing first they're, asking them to do this thing, and,
Right.
And I won't go into detail, but that's where it kind of goes. And the next, it gets into despicable things.
Well, and you also have to consider that you usually see a faster curve with some sort of authority figure.
Right.
And that's when you run into the people put in some sort of authority or custodial care or, something of that nature. So that's when you start seeing pastors and teachers and
priests
and anybody who has that kind of authority. And even though Teddy is a nut job, he is the leader of his group and he's a charismatic guy.
Coaches, another one.
Yep. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That in a way I was going, how did I not see this before?
Yeah.
And I just wasn't expecting, our pedophile groomer on my zombie show.
Well, and, so
that may be me and you running amok.
No, it's there. I'm gonna just say that, as much as we want to criticize the show for the time and the distance stuff, and I just reamed it for 25 minutes.
Yes, you did.
The way that they nailed this grooming that went on with these characters, I mean, it's textbook and it's like right there and they nailed it, so you can't, I know that so much of the criticism of this show has been negative in the last couple of seasons, and some of it is definitely justified, but they get certain things right on the money. And I have to say, when it comes to showing Teddy being a pedophile, they nailed it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you and I have both said it, that sometimes it's the execution of what they've written, as we've gone on about time and distance. Sometimes it's not necessarily how it was acted, but how it was, how it was directed, or maybe how it was written. But what is the one thing that we consistently say good about the show? It's character moments.
Yes.
It's how the actors deliver the lines they're given. How many times did we go on about John Dory, that even though they put him in crap situations, that he was a good enough actor with good enough lines that he pulled it out? And
it's worth saying, just thinking about this, a lot of the criticisms that we have, if this was not Texas, if this was, say, Louisiana or Arkansas, right? Which in terms of land area, quite a bit smaller, would we criticize them as much for these things? I don't think we would.
No.
It's unfortunately, they got a, chance to do their show in Texas, and if they were going to do the show in Texas, I think what they should have done is limited how much of Texas they were going to be in. Like, not use Texas as a canvas and try to be in every, facet of it. And especially don't go into Oklahoma.
Well, let's throw your statement out and say, if we were in the same area as we have been for the main show.
Yeah.
Alexandria, Northern Virginia, Southern Maryland.
Yeah.
I could buy a lot more of what we've seen.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're talking about those two states would fit inside Texas with room to spare.
Yeah.
And
we're not seeing, Virginia, well, you're right next to Virginia. It's a pretty long state. And especially when you go into, southern and western Virginia, there are a lot of area that the main show doesn't get into. It never goes that far, and who knows how far the Whisperers went into. When they went south, who knows how far south and how long it took them and how much distance they traveled from, the Alexandria area just to, go south for the winter when they did that and avoided the snowstorms.
And just to be editorial about it, I can drive from my house in the center of the state. I can be in the mountains in the west of North Carolina in 2 hours. And I can be at the beach in about 4.
Right.
So if you want to say it's 8 hours from my house to Trenton, New Jersey, if you drive hard. But if you drive 6 hours, if you start in, say, Beaumont, Texas, which is right close to the Louisiana border, if you drive 6 hours west, you're still going to be in Texas, and you're still going to have a lot of Texas left to go through.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, as we have both asserted, Texas is a big state.
It's huge.
It's a big state. And considering that, Texas is bigger than a lot of European countries.
Yeah.
I have friends that live, like Fred. Fred lives in the Netherlands. And if he drives 2 hours, he'll be in another country. If I drive 2 hours in any direction, I'll still potentially be in my home state.
Yeah. We call him Fred from the Netherlands, by the way. I know a lot of you Walking Dead listeners don't listen to us on the Star Trek podcast, but he's the opposite. He listens to us on the Star Trek podcast and doesn't watch The Walking Dead. So, but yeah, he's in the Netherlands, and so it's quite a bit smaller there.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, I did have more what sauce, but it's not specific to the show. I'm going to say that this what sauce was the fault of a poor Wikipedia editor or writer. I got spoiled on part of the episode. I was trying to go because I was like working on the document, I guess, to set up for this week's episode, and I hadn't had a chance to watch the episode yet. And I figured it was the showrunners, and I figured it was the co-executive producer, who had written and directed it. So I went to the Wikipedia article for season 6, and I get there, and I saw that there was already a synopsis for it, and I tried to look away, but somehow my eye went down, and the very first and only 3 words I saw of what was posted was Dakota kills Teddy. Now, when I went back to write this into the to the Word doc, it had already been corrected. So someone had realized that, oh, that's terrible, and corrected it. But yeah, someone had written the synopsis to say very first thing, Dakota kills Teddy. So thank you very much.
Well, and that goes back to my diatribe from a few weeks ago of whoever keeps posting the spoiler clips on YouTube that keep dropping into my feed.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Unless you have something else for what sauce, I'd say let's move on to sad sauce.
I do not, sir.
Aww.
Okay, let's start off with our sad sauce with Renee from Atlanta. She says, Rachel killing herself in order to save her baby. I always say a mother would gladly give her life to save her child. Grace looking all sad when she saw the baby. Crying face, crying face, crying face. And she finishes up by saying, what is going on with Alicia? Angry face, angry face, angry face.
Aaron from the internet. She has them classified in 2 different sections. First is sad. She says, we don't see Alicia at all this episode, and it easily could have been fixed with a shot of her screaming still to be let out, or in question as to what's happening when she sees things falling from the ceiling in the hallway. It wouldn't be a hard shot to get, as all they'd have to do is film Alicia a little longer from the mother episode. Alternatively, they could have shown her cell empty and were left to wonder if she got out somehow, or was she taken deeper into the bunker, and if so, by who, and can she change their minds on things? But no, we get nothing. Frowny face. They don't really use her like they could or should on this series. Again, Fear was about a family named the Clarks, and she is the last of them, but instead of her being the series lead, we get Morgan. Why? He should be second to her, if anything, in screen time. Honestly, lower than that, because Strand and Daniel, who are originals too, are still around, and leadership positioning, but what we have is him making consistently dumb decisions and changing his mind on rules every 5 seconds. And I'm sorry, TWD fans, but the guy y'all describe and who we see here don't match up to me. And even if they did, he's still not an original to this series, so we can get and stay behind Alicia. They may call this series Fear still, but it's so not anymore. So this is now conflicted sauce. And she says, I'm not sure if this is weak sauce or sad sauce for how bad it was, or awesome sauce because they both got what was coming to them. But Dakota killing Teddy, again, on the one hand, I like her sticking to the fact she wasn't going to change, and he brought this on himself. But after all, they went through for John's dad and the group against this group. For the other bad guy to kill him, it just felt so blah. Nah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seemed poetic justice to me.
Oh, it worked for me. But all right. Emma from the UK says Rachel killing herself because she couldn't walk on the broken leg. Morgan and Grace planning their double suicide.
Yeah, I have to say that one was particularly sad. You know, seeing with Morgan, you know, cocking the weapon and, you know, in the straight, you know, basically straight through with her head.
Hopefully he would get both of them.
Yeah. And we've seen that before. I remember in season 3, I think there was that old couple, and his wife died in the middle of the night, and you know, he started dancing with her, and you know, he took the gun and he put it to his head and her head, and you know, shot it off. And we may have seen that elsewhere too, but I remember that particular one.
Yep.
Yeah. Dieta from Detroit says Rachel turning herself to save baby Morgan. IDK. Rachel, I would have rolled that truck on the rims to get somewhere safe instead of trying to change a busted tire. Shrug, shrug. And why was she by herself anyway? Where were the rest of the people from Morgan's community? That's a good question. And we've asked this question a few times. Where are the kids? Where are the kids?
Yep. And see, Dieta and I were on the same wavelength.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make sense that they would just continue to... It doesn't make sense to try to fix a tire, especially at that time. You just got to keep going. I mean, so you go, instead of going 50 miles an hour, you go 30 miles an hour. Well, it's still better than going 0.
That's correct.
All right. What do you have for sad sauce?
Well, mine's more, for the first one, it's more awe. But the fact that we got to see Dwight and Sherry finally reconciled and having their little tearful moment. And it's one of those things. I said it before that, they are my hopeful couple for the apocalypse. That they spent so much time that Dwight was looking for her and Dwight found her and she didn't have her head screwed on straight. And we were thinking, no, Dwight and Sherry are not going to be together. And then they got back together and they talked it out. And now, our zombie apocalypse couple are back together again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, come on. Maybe I'm a big softy and I'm sentimental, but it's just the kind of thing that, from a story standpoint, that I kind of like the fact that they're back together.
I do too, actually. I do too.
And you already talked about it a little bit. The scene with Morgan and Grace in the sub before they had the world's loudest baby show up. It just really got to me because I really think the way that both of the actors played it, you really had the feeling that Morgan was going to do it, that Morgan was down to the end of his rope. He was desperate. He was ready to give up. And maybe the screaming baby is what snapped him back into survivor mode. But that scene really got to me. I will just say that. Of all the other stuff that happened, it was maybe not a big gem, but it was a gem enough of a moment in the rest of what had happened that I thought it was well acted. I thought it was impactful. And like I said, then we had the world's loudest baby, but for that moment, it was really, really touching.
Well, the only thing I put for sad sauce is Strand. And this is more like pathetic sauce, I guess. But Strand tries to portray himself as Morgan in what he thinks are his final moments. Like this whole thing, like he has to be remembered as a hero, even when only one person is going to hear the story.
Yep.
That
he has to convince somebody that he was a good guy.
Yeah. But the true Strand shows up again. And all right. That's it for our sad sauce. So let's move on to our listener feedback, and Rick and Simon. Well, we had 2 voicemails from Renee early in the episode, but now we've got one for this episode for Megan from Pennsylvania.
Hello, this is Megan in Pennsylvania with some feedback on Fear season finale. Number 1 for me was I was so happy to see Dakota die, and the way she did it was just absolutely gnarly. I did not honestly think the bomb was going to go off. I thought there'd be a dud or something would happen at the last minute. I was shocked that it went off. And I was even more shocked that they killed off like a teenager that way. I just I couldn't believe it. And I kept rewinding and watching it over again because it was just so interesting and cool and horrible all at the same time. And to me, she was worse than Lizzie even. Killing John Dory was horrible. He was my favorite character, but the fact that she would just willing to kill anybody, willing to die herself, but also so easily duped by Teddy, and both of them were basically just psychopaths. So I was glad to see that. I was actually concerned earlier when Teddy was kind of getting a little handsy with her, and I thought it was starting to get creepy. Was he trying to, somebody said he only needs 2. Was is he trying to save her and repopulate the earth with her. Like, I was really getting concerned. Maybe that's not the way they meant to go, but that gave me a super creep factor. And I was so glad they both just died. Like, John Glover was great in that role, and I would have liked to have seen more of him, but I was just glad that we're done with them. That was my number one thing for this episode. Other than that, I'm a little concerned about where they're going with this, because we've got all these people scattered and we don't know like what kind of fallout, how that's going to affect people. I was really concerned for the baby. Oh, and by the way, another thing I thought was pretty cool was Rachel's figuring out how to, make a last-ditch effort to get her baby to safety. I thought that was pretty incredible. And, being a mother, like, I would walk over hot coals with my tongue to save my kid. Like, I totally get what she did. I'm not sure why she had to stab herself in the stomach. That part I didn't quite get. I guess she figured she'd walk better as a zombie with that busted leg than trying to walk on her own. I don't know. But at any rate, I thought that was really cool that they rescued the baby. But the other part about that scene that made me mad, though, was when Morgan was going to kill himself and Grace, and they had the gun like pointed through like the thickest angle of his head, I think it was, to her. And like, I'm not an expert, maybe JT can weigh in on this, but I mean, bullets can fragment inside, people's heads. Like, skulls are pretty thick. I don't know what kind of gun that was or anything, but like, I would have been very concerned there was a good chance that like the bullet was going to fragment. And yes, it would probably still kill him, but maybe only enough to maim her. And that would like, leave her there in like a coma or something. I mean, that just did not seem like an effective way to commit suicide. I'd rather do a, consensual murder suicide if I were them than like, what they were trying to do. That seemed just off. One more cool thing was I was glad to see Al come with the helicopter and her girlfriend, I can't think of her name, and excited about that part because that'll be like kind of a window into bringing all the shows together. So that thread will be nice to see. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave it at that, and interested to hear what everybody thinks of this episode. Overall, I'd say it was probably a decent episode. I do get hung up on like the logical things and like why Morgan was able to just hide under a truck and be okay. And I guess they were probably pretty far away compared to like, say, Dakota. But it would be really nice if they would just kind of have a little more exposition to explain away some of these seeming inconsistencies. I would be pretty willing to buy almost anything if it made like a semblance of sense, but they just kind of leave it up to us to figure out a lot of the time. So anyway, thanks for covering this and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you
Bye.
so much, Megan, for your voicemail. Good to hear from you. And always good to get voicemails. We love them. Yeah. So you have any thoughts about
yes,
what
it
Megan
is.
says?
Well, she makes a very good point. I definitely agree with her about her fragmenting issue, that it's quite possible. And she is 100% spot on that if it didn't, penetrate all the way through Morgan's head, then there's a good chance that Grace would have just been screwed up, which would sort of not be good. And thank you so much, Megan, for your voicemail.
Yeah,
and
I mean, there were
thank you for your voicemails throughout the
there,
season.
and I don't have any children, but I certainly can see that maternal instinct in Rachel, kicking in and finding a way to save baby Morgan. So, who I guess Morgan was not conceived of with husband Isaac. I guess, because Morgan had pretty curly hair. So
I think
I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, let's move on. We first have some written feedback now. Renee from Atlanta. LT.
All right. And Renee says, overall, it was a decent finale. I hate that we have to wait God knows how long to find out the aftermath, but I'm hoping all TWD shows are about to come together because that means I'm about to see my boo thing. I love the TWD shows, but I'm ready for them to bring on the movies. I mean, it's just not the same without Rick Grimes. Hearts, 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 hearts. Okay, I got off track there. And she's got some, I guess, laughing faces. Yeah, I'm happy all our peeps survived, but I need to see Alicia. She goes on to say, see you guys in August with kisses, peace and love and hearts. She says, Kyle McAdams, we need you to come on back home. You're the missing piece to the puzzle.
We agree.
We love and miss you. Sad face.
Thank you, Renee, and thank you for all your support over the course of the season. It's been much appreciated. Let's move on. Next, Glynis from Toronto is next. She says, Dakota's main stance has been with a gun raised and pointed at someone with bottom lip trembling. The only person she didn't shoot at was Alicia. June and John Dory Sr. were prepared to give Dakota another chance. What the hell? They would have had to always watch their back with her around, as she wouldn't have changed. When she can shoot anyone on a whim and shoot someone as nice and understanding as John Dory Jr. was. So Dakota put an end to Teddy, so he couldn't then run back and start the new beginning family with Alicia. Teddy was also giving off similar creepy vibes with Dakota too. So glad he's finally ended. Yes, that's what we were saying before. So we definitely agree. Well done to Daniel for realizing that Raleigh was a plant from Teddy's group when Riley and Raleigh both said, like a phoenix rising. I still think Daniel was framed in the earlier episode, maybe by Raleigh, so he doubt himself. And I'll just stop there and say, yep, it was Raleigh. I was thinking about it. I didn't go back and watch the episode, but I was thinking about who was framing him, and you can hear it in this episode from things that he said. It was definitely Raleigh framing him. Daniel didn't do the things that we thought he did. He was framed by Raleigh. This was the same situation when he told the group about the coordinates he heard. The group was hesitant to believe him. So thanks to Luciana, they are all now on their way in the CRM chopper. Although, does that chopper crash? That blast was pretty close. I'd wonder that myself. Is Rick Grimes going to offer the group some CRM tea and biscuits when they get to their destination? Yeah, we wonder about that. This time around, when Charlie shoots, she saves Daniel from Riley. The last time she shot a gun was when she killed Nick. I guess a sort of comparison there again between Charlie and Dakota. Dwight and Shirley properly back, working together and realizing not a moment too soon to concentrate on what really matters. A little savior-y with dealing with those end beginners to oust them from the storm shelter. Yeah, I liked how that resolved. Strand sure is the chameleon of the apocalypse. However, he should be careful revealing his true nature to Howard, as Howard looked as if he was regretting his decision to let in Strand, and looked as if he was contemplating killing Strand. So it looks as if Alicia survives with that scene that showed the bunker. Maybe she'll be able to get out under her own steam without someone having to unlock that door for her, since no Teddy is going to now pitch up unless June and John Dory Sr. will eventually land up at that spot through that underground tunnel system. I don't know about that, but we'll see. So Morgan and Grace now have Rachel's baby, an instant family, but Grace didn't all look that keen to even hold the baby. So Morgan was left holding it. Don't say they're going to part again. That second blast that happened after they all got out from under the truck did seem that it would have a blast radius that'll reach them while they stand outside in the open. Yeah, I did notice, especially on the second watch, the how Grace seemed to be kind of standoffish as far as this. But I don't know. I think she'll come around to it, but it might take her a couple of episodes. So here's a summary of where the survivors are all at the end of the episode. Daniel, Luciana, Charlie, Sarah, Rabbi, and Wes on the CRM chopper. June and John Dory Sr. somewhere in the tunnels. Dwight and Sherry in the storm shelter. Strand on a high rise. Morgan, Grace, baby Morgan, and the Bloodhound next to the submarine. Al working at some rendezvous point for the CRM chopper, and Alicia in the bunker. Well, bunker at the hotel. It looks as if the whole group will have varying degrees of effects of the nuclear blast fallout, with the exception of maybe Alicia not suffering any effects. But how will they all now get their food and water from, with everything contaminated, while also keeping protected from the fallout? Will they find Teddy's stash of equipment that was saved from the fire that Alicia started in the old place when they had to desert? Roll on Fear the Walking Dead Season 7 in the fall about the effects and how they cope and manage the fallout. Well, thank you, Glynis, for your feedback. I don't know. Is that when Season 7 is going to start? I know we're going to get, first we're going to get Walking Dead Season 11 in August, and then it's either going to be Fear Season 7 probably in October, and then I don't know if they're going to do the same kind of thing, doubling it up with World Beyond. I hope not, but they may do that again. We'll see. We don't know. They haven't announced it yet.
We don't know.
I do know they're working on Season 7. Like they're shooting it right now.
I'm assuming that Fear will be in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Because they've actually had some
Dieta from Detroit.
Steel leakage. All right, and Dieta goes on to say, I'm still not understanding how Al just magically disappeared to find her helicopter boo. But was supposed to be looking for Alicia with Luciana and Wes? How the hell did she find helicopter boo and manage to send a helicopter to rescue the others in the nick of time from the explosion? So everybody just stopped looking for Alicia? Hell, it was enough of them to split up somewhere to go to the submarine and the others to look for Alicia. It's when they were at the submarine, they just basically stood around looking at each other and listening to Morgan and Victor argue about who was going to be the hero. Again, they could have just rushed the sub, killing the dead together, and probably got to Teddy and the sub guy before they turned the keys. The highlight was Dwight and Sherry helping that family get their shelter back, and June and John's daddy putting doubt in Dakota's deranged head that Teddy was using her, so she ended him like she does when someone pisses her off with a shot to the chest and the head. Bye, Teddy. June and John daddy saying they forgive her was a waste, in my opinion. Did they really mean it? I hope not. Rachel the Walker, led by Rufus the dog, finds Morgan in the nick of time to save baby Morgan, but Grace doesn't look too happy about baby Morgan being thrust into their newfound love for each other. And let's talk about Victor. After surviving the nuclear blast, admits to himself and knows who he really is and has been since the start of the apocalypse. Shocked face. Shocked face. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole after that speech. Oh, he better be careful. Karma is y'all know the saying. Is Victor going to last another season? Chin scratch, chin scratch. Sounds like his character has had his arc moment. Shrug, shrug. Overall, okay episode. I still think Dakota was the spy, but wait, Daniel shot that other guy who was with Sherry's people.
Yes.
So was he a spy also? And I think we have pretty well said yes.
Yes. All right. LT, do you have any other notes? Anything else to bring up about this episode?
No, I think we've pretty well beat the wheels off of everything we need to talk about.
I think there's a good chance that season 7 could end in New Mexico because we know that eventually season 11 of The Walking Dead, well, we don't know that's where they're going to end up, but there has been talk with Carol and Daryl about going to New Mexico. So maybe that's what they do. They go to New Mexico because they have to get away from the fallout, because eventually, if everything's contaminated, the only way to survive is to leave, right?
Yeah.
So that's my take.
But why? Well, my only argument would be if I'm going to go a direction, I'd go east.
Right.
Because New Mexico, while it's a lovely place with modern amenities, it's kind of dry and kind of hot.
Yeah. Well, I only say New Mexico because they said New Mexico, but
okay.
Well, I brought up Arkansas. Maybe Arkansas would be good. I don't know, or Oklahoma, or wherever they are, but not here. Get away from the fallout and all the contamination.
Yep.
Anyway, okay, so let's move on to news, ratings, and info, and we actually have some.
What the hell is happening?
I have no idea.
All right, so we have ratings for the last 2 episodes because ratings, we didn't even have ratings for season 6, episodes 15 last time. So just covering the last 3 episodes, like I will do when we have to cover ratings for 2. So the season 6, episode 14, Mother, that, if you recall, was a 0.23 in the 18 to 49 with 940,000 viewers, which I think at the time was the all-time low. Season 6, episode 15, USS Pennsylvania, that was also not on the Memorial Day weekend. That was 2 weeks later, so I think it suffered from people forgetting that it was on. So it went and sunk to an even worse all-time low at 0.17 in the 18 to 49 with 872,000 viewers. Thankfully for the season finale, and probably because they knew that nukes were involved, some people, came back and tuned in. So Fear the Walking Dead, the season finale, got a 0.20 in the 18 to 49 with 1.045 million viewers. So it finally got above 1 million again.
But how is the decimal lower than season or episode 14 when it had fewer viewers?
How is the decimal?
Because 14 was a 0.23 with 940.
Yeah.
And 16 is a 0.20 with a 1.045 million. So
that, I think it just means that, maybe more of the 25 to 54 and 50 and over tuned in for the season finale.
Okay,
so
that's fair.
That's fair. That's the only thing I can think of, because it's not, the total number of viewers isn't like a direct correlation to the rating. It's
okay. Well, just
yeah. I don't have a rating or number of viewers for Talking Dead, which did air, for the season finale. But I did get, of course, for Fear the Walking Dead. Again, as far as the parrot analytics, the only thing I've got is that number 1 again is SpongeBob, and that's at 69.3 times the average show's demand. Number 2, My Hero Academia at 58.2 times, and 51.3 times number 3, Saturday Night Live. So not a lot of change there. Looks like a couple went down, Lucifer and Sesame Street, but lots of perennials there. Rick and Morty was up, looks like, number 7.
Yes, Rick and Morty made a big surge upwards.
Yeah. And that's it as far as our news. So, LT, why don't you take us out and tell people how to contact us?
All right. We want to encourage you to follow us on Twitter. That's at Walking Dead TTM. Also on Instagram at the same handle. To submit your theories and feedback. Wait a minute. Before we do this, should we say the other part?
Huh?
There's not going to be any fear next Sunday.
Yeah.
So we're going to be taking a break.
We're going to be off for a while. We'll be on hiatus. So, unless there's some big news that comes up during the break,
dead in the water.
Yeah, we might, if there's something for Dead in the Water or, big Comic-Con trailer or something we want to cover, other than Patreon, which I want to do a Patreon episode, there's not going to be too much until August. So, and if we do, it'll probably be a short episode. So.
Okay. And with that said, to submit your theories and feedback, most people post in our designated episode thread in our Facebook group. That's at facebook.com/groups/WalkingDeadTTM. You can email us at walkingdead@talkthroughmedia.com. You can utilize our feedback forum, which is at talkthroughmedia.com/feedback. If you'd like to leave your voicemails, you can do that at 216-232-6146. Remember that all of our new episodes are on YouTube. Just search for Talk Through Media and remember to subscribe and click that bell to get notified when we have new videos. These videos go out first before the podcast does. We want you to like and review the Talk Through Media Facebook page at facebook.com/talkthroughmedia. As Brian already mentioned, the best way that you can support us is through our Patreon. That's at www.patreon.com/WalkingDeadTalkThrough. We would like to thank our Patreon supporters, Clint McCollum, Renee Murray, and Lawrence Todd.
The guy you're hearing.
And LT would like to thank our Patreon supporters. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or the podcast client of your choice. While you're there, please give us a rating or a review. You can also leave us a review at podchaser.com. There you can rate individual episodes or the whole podcast. Remember to share our posts on Facebook and Twitter when we post them, or tell a friend. Word of mouth is the best way to get us new listeners.
And it's worth saying that the next time that you'll probably be hearing us, and hopefully Kyle will be covering Star Trek Lower Decks. So, when that comes back, technically right now it's myself and Kyle that are the hosts, but I imagine LT, you'll be there with us either officially or unofficially as we go. So if you don't watch Star Trek, then it probably won't be until The Walking Dead comes back, which season 11, episode 1 will premiere August 22nd, 2021 in the US. And you can watch out for that. So remember that date, August 22nd, Sunday on August 22nd, The Walking Dead season 11 will premiere. And as far as other stuff, of course, we mentioned the Facebook group for the Star Trek podcast, which is at facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. Yesterday was actually on June 16th was Star Trek Picard Day. And we saw a teaser for the new season of Star Trek Picard, and it looked amazing. And I can't wait for that, but that's not going to be back until 2022. We hope to do a Patreon for that soon, and the Patreon is at patreon.com/Brian Aruthi. And also remember, part of the network, and of course, part of Star Trek, is the Rebinged DS9 podcast. They post their episodes also in that same Facebook group, but you can find the feed where podcast clients are, any podcast client that you use, but it's also part of the Talk Through Media all-inclusive feed. So that's about all we have. So until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm LT.
And this is Fear the Walking Dead talk through. Bye for now.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
LT and Brian say good night.